Hello everyone, this is Vikas and you are listening or watching a Run with Fitpage. It's our weekly show and we have the pleasure of speaking with world-renowned scientists, researchers, athletes and recreational athletes as well who have done significantly well in their field of training. The discussion today is going back to basics. That is, what are the pillars of training and performing? And one of the pillars that continues to be a very important point but neglected often is sports nutrition. That is fueling. The performance cannot be optimized only through training. It also requires various other things to be kept in mind. And like I said before, sports nutrition, performance nutrition, optimal nutrition is one of the very important things to keep in mind. And to discuss that, to understand the very basics of it, I have the pleasure of speaking with Ernst Albin Hansen. He's someone who has not only been an athlete himself, he was actually a cyclist in his national team in Denmark, but also he has been an academician. He's a sports scientist himself, and he researches and teaches sports science. In the discussion today, we will talk about why nutrition is important, what do you keep in mind when you are making a decision about optimal nutrition, and what you may not need to be doing. You will also see, I also talk about excessive consumption of salt. It's something that has been in my mind for a while, and you would have seen I have created some content in this area earlier as well. And today also I will continue to discuss this. Let's welcome Mr. Hansen to the show and learn all about basics of performance nutrition from the running point of view. Let's go. Thank you very much for accepting, for being with me today. It's our weekly show and we discuss about a topic that is of interest to runners. And today, fueling sport nutrition and performance in running is the topic that we'll be discussing. And it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into any of that, how about we start with a small introduction of how you got interested in the subject? In sports science, particularly academically, and I'm also aware that you have been an athlete yourself. So how this all love came together?
Yeah, well, I have a history of being a competitive cyclist on a national team level in Denmark, and have spent many years doing that. And when I ended my career, I started a new career, which was in sports science. So that was approximately 25 years ago. And I immediately got interested in performance optimization and have covered many areas focused on cycling a lot, but also on running and trying with our research, trying to help people get the most out of their talent, basically. And not only for elite athletes, but also for everybody, because I think you invest so much time and effort in your training, and I think you should get the most out of it.
Very true. Very true. And so you got interested in sports science. Seemed like a natural progression from you being one who was practically implementing in your sport to being someone who was studying it, to be able to potentially provide the tools for all of us to be able to implement in our sport. So how did that progress? Did you study the topic and then gradually you moved to academics and that's where you started teaching? Is that how it was?
Well, I started at university as a sports science student, and I spent 6 years doing that. And I spent quite a lot of time on my master thesis project, which was also related to sports performance. And then it just took off from there. I did a PhD after that, and I've done many studies trying to optimize physical performance, but also to study many other things that has nothing with performance to do, but more basic motor control, for example, and things like that.
Got it. Interesting. And that's why the topic today is of great interest. Performance optimization, that is. And this is what I'm sure this is what you tried and attempted in as an athlete, and then later as someone who studied the topic, and now you've been teaching. Now, when we look at performance, all of us, whether recreational athletes, amateurs, or elites, all of us, we want to get better at the craft. And one of the things that elites do differently than recreational and amateur athletes is that they have accessible information how to optimize performance in addition to what they do in the training. They're doing it professionally, so they're able to recover significantly well. They have someone who's able to help them almost all the time. And same is the case with almost every other aspect of performance, whether it is nutrition, fueling, or any of these. When it comes to recreational and amateur athletes, most of us have another daytime job, and we start to think of sport as a possibly a fitness activity. We want to just get fitter, and that's how most of us we pick up, and then over a period of time it becomes competitive. But it seems like it's single dimensional for a number of us. That is, we want to focus on training, just simply training, and we think, hey, if I train, if I run a lot, I will run better, I'll run faster, and I'll keep progressing, which is not the case after a point. I wanted to pick your brain in understanding what are the other dimensions in optimizing performance for us as amateurs, and that's why this topic is a lot more important, just to set the base right at the start, and then we'll get into fueling and nutrition as we progress.
Yeah, you're right. I can completely follow your presentation of this. You can do many different things to improve performance, and not only performance. I think comfort and joy is also very important when we speak about these things, because that is what will keep you continue your training and your effort. If it's not enjoyable in some way, you will drop it and do something else, which is perhaps not so healthy for you as training is. So you can do many things, and we know that we by changing the training strategies, training modes, can pick up some percentages in terms of the performance enhancement. But what went clear to us at some point of time was that, hey, it seems like the energy intake in long distance performance, that could be long cycling races or long running races, it is so important for performance, and you can enhance your performance a lot just by changing your intake. So it doesn't require much from you. Training is hard. It's hard work, and to train a lot to improve your marathon with, let's say, 10 minutes or something like that, it takes a lot of effort. But there are ways, easier ways to get that kind of performance improvements. And that was very interesting for us, and big motivation for us to dig into this some years ago.
Right. Now, that makes me even more curious. That is, I always thought I can just simply train and I'll be good at it. I always thought what I'm eating, I can continue eating because that's what has kept me fit and healthy so far. And here, as soon as I start to train, earlier I had to make choices about the performance gear, the bike, or the shoes, or whatever. And now it seems like I need to take care of my nutrition also differently. Now, I wanted to understand systematically why exactly is it needed? Don't I have energy availability in the body that I can just simply continue to use? For example, someone told me that there is so much of fat that is used in your body. You can oxidize it, you can use it if you're fat adapted, use it as an energy source in a suboptimal effort activity. Then why do I need to look at fueling nutrition intake separately during the sport?
Yeah, well, you have enough energy in your body for a certain distance or for a certain time
Right.
to be active. And in a marathon race, for example, you can more or less, go halfway on what you have stored in your body. So you have maybe with a big difference between individuals, but let's say you have half a kilo of glycogen sugar in your muscles and in your liver stored and ready,
Yeah.
to use when you start running. But you run out of that, and you do that approximately halfway. So you can, of course, continue without any intake. You would have to slow down. You would have to move to fat oxidation, and with that you cannot maintain the same speed. So you will have to decrease velocity and maybe even walk, but you can complete the marathon. But if you like to keep the velocity that you started out with, you will need some intake, and that is to supplement with glucose because you don't have a storage big enough for the whole race.
Right, right. Um, Now, it seems like fat is not an optimal source of energy when I'm performing sport. And that is why it seems like once my glycogen is depleted, I need to reduce my paces to be able to even continue. And like what you said earlier, possibly I can continue and even complete the race, but the comfort, the pain that it will attract is going to be significantly different. And most of us who have done a marathon have experienced on multiple occasions. Now, I wanted to understand before we get into a little more in detail on fueling is why is it the case that glycogen is a better energy source during racing or training versus the fat as an energy source? Because I'm told there is an abundance of energy in form of fat. Why the oxidation and the utilization of that as an energy source is more difficult? I'm asking this more as a layperson because I think that will help me understand how do I then proceed.
Yeah, but well, the turnover rate is higher. So with sugar, the turnover rate is higher, so you can get more energy faster. So you have a lot of fat. Most of us, we have a lot of fat, and so we can walk, run for a long, long time just using that. But the velocity, the speed cannot be so high because the turnover rate is too slow. So that is what the glycose can do, and this is what we use when we want to run fast. But just to make sure that that sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we go, only with glycose or with fat turnover. But it's
Right.
not like that. It's always a combination. So of course, if you run a sprint or a 400 meter or whatever short, middle distance or short distance very fast, there's not a lot of contribution from fat metabolism. But when we talk longer distances, you will have quite a lot of fat oxidation in combination with glycose oxidation. So it's always a combination of these, but the ratio between the two is what is important.
Right. And are these pre-decided? For example, if I'm doing, say, 3 hours race for a marathon, is it pre-decided from person to person as to what percentage I'm going to get from fat versus carbs, or it may differ and there is a range rather it's going to be between that?
Yeah, and it's different. It's like everything we talk about here is different from one to another. So there's quite a large difference between individuals in everything. But it's also, you can also train it. When you train your body to use more fat, to save the glucose or the glycogen that you have stored in your muscles, so that you can, keep the high speed for a longer time. That is part of the training. So this part of your physiology is also trained, like your muscle fibers are trained, and your tendons and everything else is trained. These systems are also trained.
Got it. So this seems like it's not the case that we are genetically gifted or cursed, but rather it's trainable, and of course within a particular limit, it's a trainable. And so, can we stay here for a little bit more and please help me understand what type of trainings are going to promote fat adaptation versus what type of trainings will promote metabolism of carbohydrate? Rather, where is the case that one is prioritized over other? Is it the effort? Is it the duration? Is it something else?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure we have the precise answer for that, but for sure, if you want to train that endurance capacity, this is also what we're talking about, right? In this kind of performance, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, you need to have some long, slow training sessions. And this is training the fat metabolism for sure. But you also need to have some shorter sessions, which are maybe around the anaerobic threshold. And this is also training the same systems, but it's also training something else. So it's so you cannot just do one thing and say that, okay, now I want to be a world champion in fat metabolism, so I'm just doing long, slow training sessions all the time. No, this is not the way to go. Actually, my recommendation is that you need to train everything, even short sprints, if you're a marathon runner, because this has maybe not a big effect on the metabolism systems, but it has a huge effect on tendons and muscle fibers and things like that, your bones. So you need to do it all, but of course there should be a balance, and you need to do more of certain things. That's for sure.
No, for sure. No, that makes absolute sense. And now, when I'm thinking of say, if I stay with a lower intensity, long term, long duration activity, and that is helping me possibly being fat adapted over a period of time, does it also mean if my primary purpose was to use more fat as an energy source, then do I go in a glycogen depleted state? And I totally get it that it's not a generic advice that will fit for all. But at general level, should it be fasted? Should it not be fasted? What are some of the strategies to keep in mind?
Yeah, you're touching something very interesting that was also a subject of research maybe 10 years ago or something. Exactly
Yeah.
what you're talking about, that maybe there could be a big effect of going out on tough training sessions on a fasted state, so that you kind of went out not completely depleted, but more depleted than in a normal condition. And there was actually some results showing that, yeah, this could work, but this could improve your performance. But there were certainly also some studies showing that that was not the case. And I think after some years of doing this kind of research, at least that is my analysis of this, was that, yeah, you had some studies showing good effect, and you had the same amount of studies showing that no, don't do that. So, well, yeah, you could do that, but I'm not a fan of it because I
Okay.
think it's too mentally tough, and it takes away the joy of training and being active
Training.
to go out in that state. So I'm actually a fan of the opposite. That go out, train what you need to do, but make sure that you have all the energy that you need also during training. So, fuel yourself as if it was a race. I think it's much more fun to train that way.
Right.
I think the effect is good. And so that is my recommendation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but because this is something that I've been reading a lot of literature on, which says if you want to be fat adapted, when you go for your workout, try and do it first thing in the morning. Just have coffee, go out and run, and overnight you have fasted, and so that's going to help. And I saw a lot of narratives around it, so I wanted to see if that is the case. Otherwise, as you are alluding to, it seems like that may or may not be the case. There are both school of thoughts, isn't it?
No, but there's so what kind of run do you do that morning? Are we talking about half an hour run? Are we talking about 1 hour, 2 hours, or it depends a lot. So if it's some kind of training that is very taxing on your on your energy
Right.
balance, then I'm not a fan of doing that after I faced many hours of faced. But I'm a fan of going out in the morning, take a cup of coffee, go for a 30 minutes or 40 minutes run. Perfectly fine,
Yeah.
because you have enough energy stored in your body to do that. No problem.
Right. Right. No, makes sense. So now let's move towards understanding the point that you talked about, comfort. And honestly, being less painful is possibly also good, because here, at least, what I hear from a lot of runners, they say if there is no pain, there's no gain. If I don't suffer during training, or if it's not hard enough, that means it's not working very well. But that doesn't have to be the case, that I have to be sore all the time or it be hurting from everywhere. I wanted to understand, I, as a recreational runner, when I go and I run, maybe I'm out for an hour of run or hour and a half of run. At times, I don't feel that I need to have any external nutrition during training. How do I make a decision that nutrition is needed at what stage of my training?
Yeah, but well, again, back to the marathon race, we can see that if you don't get sufficient intake
Yeah, yeah,
in a marathon race, you run perfectly same time, speed as those who have a scientifically based intake. So to say that the first 20 kilometers or something like that, it doesn't really.
right.
Maybe it matters, for the next day. So so maybe you will. So if you have some gels with you on your training and training pass, and you make sure to take that, and you get some very fast after your training, and maybe it's better. You will recover faster, so you will be ready earlier for your next training session. So that is also something to consider. Not only, the training session we're talking about, but what about the next one?
Right.
But yeah, again, you can if you are running regularly, you can easily run yeah, let's just say 15K or 20K or something like that without much intake. It's after that it really hurts your performance. It's not a lot of time compared to if you are a cyclist, for example. It's more normal. So a normal training session could easily be 3 hours. So that's different from running, because running is not
Yeah.
so long duration. in the training sessions as cycling.
Right. Right. So I think this is very important takeaway that you mentioned, which is if you're training, you don't take nutrition just for that training period, but rather you're also taking so that you can come back for your next training session, and you can keep coming back for your subsequent training sessions. And so sustaining the training and the impact of it, there is significant amount of work that needs to be done through optimal fueling, and that will help, correct?
Yeah, and again back to these studies and these ideas about going out, making it very, very tough on yourself, going out in a fasted state, training intensively, having a lot of
Yeah.
pain. Yeah, well, you probably also have a lot of gain from that. But what about the next session? When,
Right.
how will you feel in the next training session? Will your intensity be lower in that because you're still not, back to a good state? So if you have to pay the price in the next training session, then what about the total training that you have performed then after 1 week or after 2 weeks? These are some thoughts that you have to do also, that it's not one session. Training for these things we are talking about here, it's the total amount of training for months, right? So you have to think
Right.
about these
Right.
things.
Got it. Now, it seems like um, nutrition for performance and uh, sustainable training is important. So when I'm running, because we are talking about running particularly here, um, what is happening to my body from nutrition point of view? I understood that energy is required for me to be able to sustain the run, and so I'm spending energy. My body is spending energy. In addition to that, I'm also sweating, and sweating less or more could be a function of many things, including the weather and my own sweat rate. Now, from here also there is certain depletion that's happening. So when I'm thinking of nutrition, what do I think of? Do I only think of simple carbohydrate, or do I also think of electrolytes replenishment as well?
No, definitely the last thing also. And luckily, in most of the commercial available products, there's taken
Right.
care of that. So in gels and energy drinks and products like that, there's also electrolytes in it. So yeah, definitely that's a part of nutrition too.
Right. Now, for every hour of training that I'm doing, I know if I'm doing a long workout, then I need to start replenishing early on, because it's going to maybe reduce the deficit of the energy that's been spent versus what I'm going to consume. Because we also know that per hour consumption of energy is also limited by several factors, and we cannot ingest and keep in the stomach, and rather ingest and utilize the energy beyond a particular number, but the expenditure is a lot more. So at what stage do we start fueling? If I'm training for say if I'm going to go for my long run of 3 hours, do I need to start taking it right from the start, or do I start taking after 15-20 kilometers for that matter?
No, I would definitely go start the intake from the beginning, and that's kind of the same strategy for marathon races, right? That you cannot wait until you start feeling fatigued at 21K, and
Right.
then start to try to save yourself in that boat. No, it has to start from the beginning. And I would say it's the same if you go for a very long training session. I would even, because you have often the challenge that you have to bring the stuff with you, right? So unless you go in circuits and get back to your home or some place where you can get some, then you have to bring it with you. So I think a good strategy is to start with 2 gels, for example, before you start running, and drink half a liter of water, and then you don't need anything for the next 40 minutes. So then you don't have to carry that, but you carried it in your stomach, but you don't have to carry it in your pockets. So that is a good strategy, I think, and it's also a strategy that I practice for races. And if you want to do something like that in races, to take that or to do that to take that intake before, we're talking 5 minutes before the start, right? Then it's good to practice also, to see whether you can actually cope with that, or if it gives you some GI symptoms or something you have to deal with.
Right. What are some of the constraints by which we are limited as to how much of energy can we consume? Is it also trained and adaptable, or there is a threshold everybody should follow?
It is actually. The latest research points at that it should be trainable. We don't know too much about it, I think, yet. So more research has to be done, but it's very individual, I think. So you have to find out whether you are kind of person that can consume 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour, or whether you should go, with 30 or 45 grams per hour. It's a big difference between individuals. And this is something you find out also in your training sessions. Um, but yes, you can also probably also train it. How do you do that? You do it in your long runs, for example. So you make sure that you have gels with you, or some depots where you can place it, or whatever kind of practical solution you can come up with.
Right. Right, right. Yeah, and I do remember in the very start, as I started to have gels, I had significant gut issues. It just did not feel right, and I could not keep it in my stomach. But over a period of time, it seemed like I was now feeling more comfortable having the same gels, and from having one gel, it moved to two and three, and then my body started craving for it. If I would not have it, it would not feel normal. So I've seen that anecdotally, and I think that's what you were saying as well, that you should try and start slow during your long runs and see how it goes from there.
I completely agree. In addition to that, you could have individual preferences for different products also. So they are not the same. They are not tasting the same. They could be different also in, specific content. So if you have a problem with some product, try another one, because it can easily be the key to success for you, just to buy another product.
Right, right. Now, what I understood from this conversation so far, that is that we should look at having simple carbohydrate, and most of the performance carbs that come in form of gel, etc., they do have electrolytes as well. That's required, is what I've seen as well. And then, of course, water consumption. In addition to this, do I think of anything else at very broad level? Without, of course, it needs specificity, it needs testing, etc. But is there anything else happening at this level in training from a nutrition point of view that I should look at replenishment at a broad level or not?
I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but there are some recently, actually, they have developed gels that contains a combination of glucose and fructose,
Right.
and this is a possibility of increasing the intake or the uptake, actually, significantly. So with glucose, the recommendation is a maximum of 60 grams per hour. That you cannot take up more from your stomach. But you have different transport in the gut for glucose and fructose, and therefore, if you combine these two different kinds of sugar, you can actually have a larger total uptake. And that is something to consider, I would say. It's very popular now. It's very, very good. I use it myself also. It's perfect.
Yeah, and most of the newer gel companies and newer products are using a combination of both.
Yeah, yeah, probably. It's a big development going on right now within that field. So it was different
Right.
only a couple of years ago. It
Right.
is developing a lot now.
Right. So my question actually was also a little more that was when I'm training, do I only need to look at carb replenishment and electrolytes and water replenishment, or should I also think of protein, fiber, and fat during training?
I w-
During
yeah,
training.
no, I would not do that. It slows down your uptake of carbohydrates. I think you don't need it. Uh, it could be different with cycling again because if you're biking for 3 hours plus, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours or something, it's a different thing. So it could be there could be some benefits there, but for running, I would say no.
Right. I see a lot of people here in India, they going with dates, having banana while running, and a few other things that have fiber as well as some amount of protein. And I wondered, and at times I wanted to understand why are people resorting to having a fiber-rich fruit during racing when they can make do with the simple carbs that's available through a processed system.
What is the explanation?
They think that it tastes good.
Yeah. Okay, but taste is something. I think it's a minor. It's less important, I think.
Yeah,
And but what you can eat without feeling symptoms is
yeah.
more important. So if eating a
Mm.
banana once in a while, or a couple of bananas, if that can make your stomach work the way you want it to work, that's a good point.
Yeah,
Then I think you should do it. But I would try to just go with the carbohydrates in forms of gels or sports
drinks.
drinks. I would start there and see if that is working. If that is working, I wouldn't care about eating fruits.
Right, right. I see this and very peculiarly popular in India. This trend, particularly where people have gels. In addition, they have sport drinks to get electrolytes, and also they have salt capsules. I wonder why there is a need of having a salt capsule in addition to having the gel as well as electrolytes. Because, as I know, maybe I'm wrong, as I know, average Indian itself is consuming so much more salt on a daily basis. And so I'm not really sure what exactly is happening when I'm training that I need to supplement, over supplement rather.
No, I don't know. uh, I I think a lot of us we eat too much salt to begin with, amounts of salt that is unhealthy for us. So but that is something. During the race, it again the products normally have salts, within them, gels and also traditional sports drinks. So I don't think there should be any need for supplementing that. Again, there can be specific individuals with specific
Yeah,
requirements, but that would be a special situation.
yeah. I agree. Yeah, it should not be for vanity purposes because someone else has purchased it or it's available in the market. So I should be having salt capsules as well because, and this is overtly dominant almost everywhere where people say, I was getting cramp after 2 hours and I had salt capsule and I felt really well. I somehow think, and of course I don't have data to support it, but somehow I felt it's a lot psychological and maybe there is so much more that's going on when you're getting a cramp towards the end of the run, whether it's fatigue, whether it's other nutrition or anything else, and not necessarily salt. And particularly salt, I'm also saying is because the hourly consumption of sodium chloride and potassium and magnesium that's needed, so these together as electrolytes, is not so much more that we need to supplement in addition to taking the carbs and in the gels, electrolytes, then electrolytes through sports drink and also from salt capsules. So that's why I wanted to understand.
Yeah, I agree.
Makes sense. I think we covered the broad level, the requirement of sport nutrition. I wanted to understand just towards the end, that is, this was for training. But other than training for recovery, what could be the other building blocks where should people be looking at protein as one of the primary things after the run that will help them recover, or fat supplementation, not supplementation, but fat as a, through food, etc., that will help recover better as well to be able to come back to training again soon?
Well, I think most of us, we have if we plan an intensive running session, we have not been eating for maybe 3 hours before or something like that, at least 2 hours. To be able to that. And then, you go for your run and you go back, and then you're probably beginning to be hungry, I think, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's a good common sense to, eat a meal relatively fast when you come back from such a training session, because you have kind of an open window. So your fibers, muscle fibers, your cells are ready, to take up energy after a training session, and you should take advantage of that, and supplement with some intake. And what kind of intake? I think, a meal. So I think you should have everything in a good meal after a training session like that. And it shouldn't be 3 hours later or something. No, it's better within the first hour. If you could organize yourself and your training sessions and your meals like that, I think that makes sense then.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems, and it doesn't seem too impractical either. Being able to go and get a good meal within an hour of completing the run seems pretty doable. And like what you said, maybe using all macronutrients and it being a good meal instead of just being a burger
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
or a high carb is not something that's going to help.
No. I mean, just a good meal, and because you need everything, I think, after a hard training session, right?
Right, right. Awesome. Sir, thank you so much. This was a good building block to understand how to use performance nutrition. And one pillar of training is nutrition. And just starting from the base of it and discussing how it is important during training and after, and giving some very specific topics for people to keep in mind has been of great value. And I truly appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too.
That was all for today. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed speaking with Dr. Hansen. If you did, leave us a feedback and we would be very happy to incorporate whether positive or something